It has officially been 1 year since I built my first custom mechanical keyboard, which is the Bakeneko65 CNC from Cannonkeys. This guy right here. And because it's been a year, I did want to give my thoughts and opinions on it. But before I do want to list off the specs, just what I've done to the keyboard and what it's made out of. So starting off with the switches, they are Gateron Black Ink V2s. For the keycaps, I am using the Canon caps from Cannonkeys CXA profile, the white and black version. And I gotta say, I love these keycaps. These are like the perfect keycap set that I have been looking for. When I was first looking for everything, I spent like 2 months trying to find the best white on black keycap set that's got like rounded corners. And during that time, I found about so many different like niche keycap profiles. I mean, there's OEM, DSA, CAT, MDA, and XDA. I'm sure there's a few more. They're just profiles I've never heard of. And then I somehow came across the CXA profile, and I don't know why it took me so long to find these. I don't know why, because I think I knew I was going to buy the Bakeneko from Cannonkeys, so I don't know how I missed this keycap set, but I'm very happy with it. So these switches and stabilizers are both lubed with Krytox 205 grade 0, and for the stabilizers, I clipped the feet, the little legs, and I also did do the Holy mod, but there's another Band-Aid mod that I did, and I'm not quite sure what the name of it is because I saw like only one video on it. And it's where you place the padded part of the Band-Aid underneath the stabilizer wire. I believe it is supposed to stop any ticking, like if your wire is unbalanced. But I did do that. And I also did the painter's tape mod for the PCB. I don't even know if it's made a sound difference at all. If you don't know, you just put a layer of painter's tape on the bottom side of your PCB. I don't know how many layers you have to do to actually hear a sound difference. I only did one layer, but I feel like it requires a few more layers to actually have a sound difference, but it's been so long, I don't remember. And I did add some foam that I found laying around my house to the bottom of the case. I know there is a foam mod where you have to cut out each switch pin so the switch pin can go through the foam and still connect in the PCB. I wasn't gonna do all of that. I just threw some under the PCB, so it's just like laying on the bottom of the case. I did want to add a little extra something to this keyboard, but I wasn't quite sure what. I know some keyboards come with like a small little metal tag that you can replace, or maybe a screen that you can upload a GIF or an image to. This doesn't have any of that. So what I ended up doing was finding a ring that was a bit too big for me and just taping it so where it's around the USB-C port. I think it looks pretty cool. I also have not seen anyone else do this before, so I'm kind of proud of this. It doesn't look the greatest when you're looking at the USB-C port directly because you can see the tape. I didn't do like a great job of trying to like hide all the tape, but when the keyboard is just in front of me and I'm using it, normally, all you see is just the top of the ring, so I think it looks pretty cool. So starting off with what I like about this keyboard, I mean, first is just how it looks. I do enjoy the look of the keyboard. It is very minimalistic, it's sleek, there's not a whole lot going on. It is a bit more basic, but for my first keyboard, I did want something more on the plain side, especially with the combination of the color black. It's gonna match with just about any color scheme that I wanted, and just with how it looks, it's not gonna stand out. And I didn't want a keyboard to be some centerpiece or something for my first board. I just wanted something a bit more, I guess, tame. I didn't want something extremely flashy, so I do enjoy how it looks. This was a pretty simple and straightforward build, so I think for that reason, it is a bit more beginner friendly. You don't have to learn how to solder. The PCB is hot swappable. And if you like RGB, this does have it. I believe it's got the south facing LEDs. I just know the LED is on the bottom of like where the switch is. So I think that's what they mean when they say south facing. You know, it's on the bottom. I could be wrong, but it does have RGB if that's something that you like. This keyboard I would consider to be more on the budget friendly side. This was $200 for the CNC version at least. And with that $200, you know, you get the case, you get a carrying case, the PCB plate and stabilizer. So all of that for $200 isn't terrible. I mean, I personally think $200 is expensive, but when we're talking about the mechanical keyboard hobby, it's definitely more on the budget friendly side. Just a quick warning before I talk about the things that I dislike about the keyboard. Everything I'm about to say could actually be user error. Like, if I don't like something, it could just be I'm doing something wrong and that causes me to not like whatever of the keyboard. So just take everything with a grain of salt. If you think I say something and it's like, oh, it actually, you don't like that thing because it is your fault, like, you know, it's user error, let me know in the comments below. So my previous keyboard was the GMMK from Glorious, not the Pro version that came out like 3 years ago, just the original like GMMK. And one problem I faced with that keyboard early on was a lot of the switches would come off with the keycaps when I was just trying to take off the keycaps. You know, let's say I was trying to clean the keycaps, so I'd have to take all the keycaps off, but that would result in all the switches to be pulled out, which I just thought was very annoying. And sadly, this keyboard faces the same issue. I don't know if it is my fault or if it is the keyboard's fault. So I don't know if it's how I'm using the keycap pullers, if it's like my technique. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I'm doing it correctly. I mean, all I do is just place the keycap puller on the keycap and then I turn it just a little bit so the wires are under like corners of the keycap and then I just pull straight up. I don't think that's wrong. I have tried before like pulling at an angle like towards me, because when I do that, then I'm able to just take off the keycap while leaving the switch in the, you know, plate and PCB. But I try not to do that because I am afraid that that's going to result in like a bent switch pin. So I try not to do that. So I don't know if it is my fault or if it is the keyboard's fault. I have looked it up and it seems like it's kind of a common thing with hot swappable PCBs. So I don't know if this is where like the $200 price range, or is the price of this board starts to show maybe like a low quality plate or PCB. Maybe it's both. Just don't hold on to the switch very well. And if that is why the switches come off with the keycaps, I don't know. So this next thing definitely ties into the first thing with like the switches coming off with the keycaps. And it really makes me think it is the keyboard's fault, like the plate or PCB, or if it's both, and not me. And that is because of the O-ring. I don't mind when the O-ring is in the keyboard. It definitely makes everything feel a lot more secure and snug. You know, if I were to flip my keyboard upside down, it stops the plate and PCB from falling out of the case. But that's really about the only thing I like about the O-ring. I don't notice a major sound difference with it in and with it out. I won't lie, I did record 2 different typing sound tests. I did one with the gasket mount in and one with it out, but I accidentally deleted those files, and I'm sorry, I cannot record those again. Trying to insert the O-ring in the keyboard is extremely difficult, and the main reason is because of the case. I mean, in the front, there is like this black little piece that kind of goes in the case. So when you're trying to put the O-ring in, you have to slide the O-ring kind of into that black piece. But since you're forcing that O-ring to be pushed into like where all the switches are, that forces switches to pop out. And that's my main complaint with the O-ring, is it forces switches to pop out, which I really don't like. Let's say, for example, I wanted to change out my escape keycap. Let's say right now it's a white one, I want it black. Because I want to take off the keycap, that would result in the switch to also come out, like I mentioned earlier. And because of where I placed the O-ring, I don't think I'm placing it in the wrong spot. If I am, that's going to be really embarrassing. But I'm placing it between the plate and PCB, and it's around all of the switches. So when I take off that escape key, and because that escape key isn't there anymore, like that switch isn't there forcing that O-ring to be pushed out, the O-ring is going to start to contract, and that will cause other switches, like surrounding switches of the escape key, let's say the tab key or the number 1 key, those switches are going to pop out, which I really do not like. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, if the issue is you taking off the keycaps or the switches, just don't do that then. But I'm afraid that is not the fix. There have been times where I'm using my keyboard just normally, just typing or playing games. And I remember one time in particular where the control key randomly just popped out. I don't know, like I didn't do anything. Maybe I pressed down on it, but not hard. I just pressed down, or maybe I didn't even do anything. I don't remember, but it was popped out. It was forced to be popped out from the O-ring, which is really annoying. I don't know why it really does that, unless I'm placing it in the wrong spot. I don't think so. So my fix for this is just to not use the O-ring at all. I mean, the keyboard is still functional without it. It's just the best thing for me to do because it has caused me so much just pain and frustration. I mean, while recording the B-roll and me trying to do that sound test with the gasket mount in, I bent 3 different switch pins. So I just can't use the O-ring anymore. It's just way too irritating. So this last thing I want to talk about, I don't really know what the cause is, but I thought I should just mention it anyways. I feel like the USB-C port is a little loose. There have been several times, I'm like once a month maybe, I will hear the Windows disconnect then reconnect sound, and it's my keyboard. And it seems like I have to move the keyboard in just the right position to where it does disconnect. Maybe it's the wiring, the wire that connects the USB-C port to the bottom of the PCB. Maybe that like gets moved around just a little bit for it to disconnect. I'm not really sure. But that's not the only issue I've had with the USB-C port. Even while recording this video, like I've had the keyboard unplugged and I've been plugging it back in, but there have been times where if the keyboard is unplugged, then I go to plug it back in and start to use the keyboard again, it just won't work. Even though that the USB-C cable is plugged in and the wire that is connecting the PCB to the USB-C port is plugged in, it just won't type anything. So I usually will have to unplug the keyboard, plug it back in like several times. Maybe I'll have to unplug the, the bottom wire that connects the PCB to the port. Maybe I'll have to do that a couple of times, but I just noticed sometimes it takes a little bit for it to work again. I don't know if that's my fault or what the issue is. It's never been a huge problem. It's not, the keyboard's never like randomly stopped. Like I haven't been in the like mid typing something and it just stops working. It usually happens when I'm like unplugging the keyboard and plugging it back in. I don't really know what the cause is though, but I just thought I should mention it. I did watch keyboard building streams and keyboard YouTube videos for about a year prior to building this keyboard. But for me, waiting a year felt like a long time to start building this keyboard, especially because I was very intrigued by this hobby. Just the fact that it's a smaller hobby, I think it seemed fun, like it looked fun to do. I don't know, it was just something I really wanted to be a part of and do myself. So waiting a year felt like a long time. But the main reason I waited so long was because of the whole building process was kind of intimidating, and like having to pick out every part was a little intimidating at first. But especially the idea of messing up, like I was very like fearful of breaking a switch, like bending a switch pin, or maybe the stabilizers. Like, I remember watching Teha Type's how to mod your stabilizer video like 7 times before even purchasing this keyboard, because I was so afraid that I was going to clip the wrong part of the stabilizer, or I was going to clip too much or not enough. So the fact that I was able to conquer those like small fears and worries makes me pretty happy. But after having this keyboard for a little over a year now, I can safely say that I am satisfied with the outcome. I know it is not the best keyboard on the market right now, even for beginners. Like, I am sure I don't keep up with the like keyboard market and like what's out right now, but I don't really need to know that there are several better keyboards out there right now in the $200 price range for beginners or just anyone. I would definitely not recommend this keyboard for beginners or anyone unless you really like the look, but it's a kind of a basic looking keyboard. Just because that O-ring has caused me so much pain, I would recommend someone to not use it. But if you're gonna buy the keyboard and not use the gasket mount, then I feel like you're not using one of the main aspects of this board. So it's like, then why buy this one and not something else? So I know it's not the best board out there, and it's not the best board I will ever build. Hopefully my next one will be much better than this. But the fact that it is my first board and it's one that I built makes me pretty proud of it with just how it's turned out. So if you think any of the dislikes that I mentioned are like user error, like just my fault, let me know. If you like this video, I don't know, like the video or just comment something, I don't know. Yeah, that's about it. See ya.